back to a time when the Titans ruled the earth. The Titans were a powerful family, but they were destroyed by their own sons, Hades, Poseidon, and Zeus. The trio created a fearsome beast called the Kraken to defeat their parents, with Hades using his own flesh to bring the monster to life. Afterward, Zeus and his brothers divided the world amongst themselves, with Zeus claiming the skies, Poseidon ruling the seas, and Hades being tricked by Zeus into becoming the ruler of the underworld. Zeus later created mortals, whose worship ensured the gods' immortality. But as time passed, some mortals began to question their creators and rebelled against them. We follow a majestic falcon back to Earth, soaring over Greece's temples and into the high seas, where we witness a large chest floating on the water. The infant, along with his deceased mother, is discovered in the chest by a fisherman named Spyros, who raises the baby with his wife Marmara. The narrator, a beautiful woman in a cloak, watches as the child is rescued and reveals that his name is Perseus. In the next scene, thunder rumbles and lightning flashes as a teenage Perseus looks up at the sky, worried. Spyro sits by his side, comforting him and assuring him of their love as he believes that Perseus was saved for a reason. 18 years later, we see the fishing boat struggling to make ends meet as Spyros, his family, and a now grown and strong Perseus have caught nothing for the day. Spyros is angry with the gods, blaming them for taking everything away. Perseus looks up at the thunderous sky and bonds with his father over the storm, reminiscing about the night when he was saved. The next morning, they set out to worship Zeus at his statue, but they witness soldiers from the city of Argos destroying the statue and declaring war on the gods. Suddenly, the skies darken and horrific winged creatures called the Furies emerge from the sea and swoop down to fight and kill the soldiers. Hades himself appears in a cloud of fire and sets his sights on the family's fishing vessel, destroying it and causing Spyros and his loved ones to drown. Perseus frantically attempts to save his family but cannot, and is the sole survivor, lying on the wreckage of the boat in utter agony. Zeus remains unyielding in his anger towards the humans' defiance. Hades, pleased with his brother's rage, rises from the underworld and requests Zeus's blessing to levy his wrath upon the mortals. Zeus grants the request, allowing Hades to turn the humans against each other and punish them for their insolence. Perseus is then seen unconscious on a ship and brought to the marketplace by soldiers who are on their way to the king. Along the way, Procopion, a fanatical worshipper of Hades, tries to warn the soldiers and the public to repent their ways to prevent the wrath of the gods, but he is dismissed and pushed aside. As Perseus arrives at the lavish kingdom, King Cepheus looks uneasy at the loss of his men, but he is pacified by his army general when assured of victory against the gods. Inside the palace, the kingdom is celebrating their campaign against the gods. King Cepheus and Queen Cassiopeia commemorate the era of man, but their daughter, Princess Andromeda, disapproves of her parents' rebellion. Despite her warnings of the consequences of angering the gods, Cassiopeia boasts of Andromeda's unparalleled divine beauty above that of Aphrodite and declares themselves to be gods, offering her, the princess, a drink. Andromeda takes the drink from her mother's hands and walks away to give it to Perseus after asking his name. As Perseus reaches for the chalice, Cepheus strikes him for taking it from Andromeda. Andromeda urges her parents to consider the potential consequences of angering the gods, but Cassiopeia rebukes them and asserts her own divine status. The revelry is abruptly interrupted by a creature squawking in the distance and a black smoke typhoon created by the arrival of Hades. Soldiers rush to protect their king and queen, and Perseus finds himself in the middle of the chaos. Hades reprimands the royals for their impertinence, disparaging their comparatively low status and mortality. When he demands that they kneel, Perseus grabs a sword and attempts to attack Hades, but a beautiful cloaked woman intervenes and urges him to bide his time. Hades asks the mortal queen Cassiopeia to gaze at him and in a cruel twist ages her rapidly, killing her. Andromeda rushes towards her mother, but Hades brutally stops her, threatening to unleash the Kraken upon the city of Argos unless Andromeda is offered as a sacrifice. As King Cepheus watches, shaken, Hades reveals to Perseus that Zeus is his father, divulging his godly heritage. In the heavens, the god Hermes informs Zeus of Perseus' demigod status and proposes sanctuary for him. However, Zeus, having received no prayers or expressions of love from Perseus, refuses. Meanwhile, on Earth, Perseus is being interrogated by the king's soldiers and their leader and Kingsguard Draco, who tortures him for information about his lineage. The king intervenes, asking Perseus to save the city if he is truly the son of a god, but Perseus claims to be just a mortal. Draco brings a visitor to Perseus's prison cell, claiming to know him. It is Io, the cloaked woman who has been watching over Perseus all his life and who led him to his adoptive family. She tells him the story of his birth when the human king Perseus led a siege on Mount Olympus. So Zeus disguised himself as the king and slept with his wife, conceiving a demigod son, Perseus. Enraged, Perseus ordered the execution of his wife and newborn son, but they were locked in a chest and thrown into the sea. Zeus retaliates by striking Perseus with a lightning bolt. Io expresses that the only way to weaken Hades is to kill the Kraken, and Perseus demands to be let out to exact his vengeance. Draco and Io lead Perseus to the Stygian witches to seek a way to defeat the Kraken. As they prepare for the journey, a soldier prays to Zeus but is mocked by another. The soldiers, joined by two hunter brothers, Kukuk and Ozal, arm themselves and set out on foot through the desert despite the public imploring them to stay back for their protection. Meanwhile, Hades meets the corrupted king Perseus, now known as Calibos, proposing an alliance against their common enemy, Zeus. Hades convinces Calibos to join forces to kill Perseus as he betrays Zeus while pretending to be on his side and growing stronger. He transfers some of his power to Calibos, who vows to serve him and kill Perseus. After walking for 4 days, the group is exhausted, but they continue onward. Perseus stops to fix his broken sandal and notices Io walking behind him. The soldiers pause for a brief rest by a campfire, and Perseus joins them with fish he caught for lunch. Draco summons Perseus for sword training to prepare for the upcoming battle. Perseus proves to be a quick learner, showcasing his combat skills. In the woods, Perseus comes across a sword forged on Olympus, sent by Zeus, which he refuses and passes on to Draco. He encounters a herd of white-winged horses, who are frightened by the arrival of a mightier black-winged horse, the Pegasus. Io informs Perseus that the appearance of Pegasus is a sign from the gods that they are being watched, with no man having ever ridden one. Soon after, the group is attacked by the corrupted Perseus out to kill Perseus. During the fight, Perseus sustains injuries, but the other soldiers rush to defend him. Draco cuts off Calibos' hand, causing him to flee to a desert with Perseus and the soldiers in pursuit. However, when they follow Calibos' trail, the blood dripping from his injury conjures giant scorpions that attack the group. The soldiers valiantly fight the colossal arachnids, but they struggle to overcome them. When a soldier is endangered by a giant scorpion, Draco mounts it and, with the help of another, slays it with his spear. Despite their bravery, more significant scorpions appear, and the situation appears hopeless for the surviving soldiers. They are rescued by the Jinn, desert sorcerers who are the kingdom's sworn enemies, who tame the remaining scorpions and offer aid to Perseus and his companions. When Perseus attempts to express his gratitude to the Jinn, Hades' venom spreads through his body, causing him to collapse. The Draco urges Perseus to pray to his father. He refuses. Meanwhile, Princess Andromeda offers food to the starving populace, but the Hades fanatic Procopion demands her sacrifice for the city's greater good, and the people agree. In the desert, the surviving soldiers, Isodius, Ixis, Draco, and Solon, bury their dead with coins on their eyes for the afterlife and watch the Jinn warily. Io tends to Perseus as he writhes in agony from the venom. When she goes to get him some water, Sheikh Solomon, the Jinn's leader, conjures a blue flame to help Perseus. The other soldiers arrive to fight the Jinn, but he fends them off and reveals through Io that they have been waiting for years for the one destined to free them from the gods. They are willing to work with them to protect Perseus. When Perseus emerges, he is healed. Draco confronts Perseus and urges him to use his gifts. Perseus declines, fearing that he will become like the gods. The Jinn arrive riding giant scorpions, and the soldiers board them, aiming to reach their destination, the Norn Mountains, in 2 days. Determined to defeat the gods, they continue on and finally arrive at the Garden of Stygia, from where they proceed on foot. Io advises Perseus to only ask the witches what he needs to know and nothing else, and he agrees. They arrive at the Stygian witches' lair, where Perseus assures the grotesque witches, who gaze through an external eye, that they mean no harm. However, they demand a sacrifice and take Assudius hostage in exchange for answers. Perseus seizes the eye amidst the chaos and threatens to hurl it off the cliff if they do not tell him what he needs to know to defeat the Kraken. The witches reluctantly reveal that the only way to defeat the Kraken is with the head of the Gorgon Medusa, who resides in a prison near the river Styx on the underworld's edge, warning that any flesh-based creature is killed by her gaze. Draco is skeptical of this solution since Medusa cannot be controlled, so Perseus suggests that they take her head instead. The witches demand that Perseus return their eye, and when he tosses it aside, they stop him to inquire if he wants to know more. He agrees, and they foretell a prophecy that predicts his death as an inescapable fate. When the other soldiers rest, Perseus takes a walk and confronts a hooded figure following him, who turns out to be Zeus. He reminds Perseus of his inevitable death and offers him shelter in Olympus, but Perseus adamantly refuses, determined to stand by his fellow men until the end. Zeus asks him to halt and gives him a gold coin as customary payment for the dead. Upon his return to the soldiers, the hunter duo presents Perseus with a shield fashioned from the scorpions that is stronger and lighter than any metal and deem themselves unfit for the fight in the underworld. Perseus requests assistance from the soldiers and they band together to help him, with Io leading the way. The group journeys to the eerie underworld and waits for the Karen, the entity that ferries the dead. On Io's advice, Perseus tosses the coin Zeus gave him between Draco and himself to take a dive into the underworld, but the Jinn throws it as a bribe for the ferryman, who arrives shortly after. As they prepare to fight the presumed beasts, Io enlightens them about Medusa's tragic story that led to her current form, with only men being allowed in her lair and none surviving the encounter with her. Io trains Perseus on how to survive Medusa, advising him not to look into her eyes as he confronts her and to conceal his palpable nervousness. When they disembark from the boat, Perseus thanks his companions and inspires them to be courageous. They enter Medusa's temple, leaving Io outside. However, they are soon attacked with arrows, fatally wounding Draco and killing Solon as he falls into the fire below, while Perseus and the Jinn cling on for their lives. Perseus and the Jinn manage to climb back up, and the dying Draco urges Eusebius and Exus to continue. However, despite their efforts, Medusa turns them into stone. Concealing himself from her sight, Perseus decides to lure Medusa out and leaps across broken pillars to escape her wrath. On Perseus' command, the Jinn aims to slice off her head. However, she is only wounded and attempts to constrict and kill the Jinn with her deathly stare, but fails to do so. The Jinn uses the blue diamond-like heart in his chest to blow himself up, severely injuring her. As Medusa crawls towards Perseus, Draco brings down a pillar to immobilize her into the ground. With everyone dead except Perseus, he finally manages to behead her using the reflective underside of his shield to see her with his back turned, and the weight of her snake body brings her demise. Upon leaving Medusa's lair, Calibos appears and fatally stabs Io in front of Perseus. Enraged, Perseus and Calibos engage in a fierce battle. In a moment of desperation, Perseus seizes the Olympian sword and fatally wounds his opponent, who briefly reverts to his human form before dying. As Io lies dying, she implores Perseus to save Andromeda and Argos before the eclipse takes over, and then transforms into light, ascending into the heavens. Just in time, the winged horse Pegasus arrives and carries Perseus back to Argos, while Hades manipulates Zeus and the gods into trusting him and releasing the Kraken. Procopion incites his followers to sacrifice Andromeda, who willingly goes to them. As the Kraken approaches, chaos ensues and Andromeda is raised for the sacrifice. In the heavens, Hades reveals his malevolent plot for revenge to Zeus, smugly basking in his triumph over the gods' reign and desire for human love and fear. On Earth, Perseus fights off waves of furies in the air and on the ground, arriving just in time as the Kraken emerges to wreak havoc on the kingdom. Leaping from Pegasus onto a fury to reach her, he retrieves the bag he brought with him and brandishes the head of Medusa before the Kraken, which begins to turn to stone and crumble. Procopion attempts to kill Perseus, but Cepheus intervenes and is mortally wounded along with Procopion as the Kraken falls. Hades confronts Perseus, but the hero invokes Zeus and throws his sword at the god, forcing him to retreat to the underworld. As Perseus saves Andromeda from the sea and they awaken on the shore with Pegasus, she offers to rule Argos with him as his queen, but he declines, choosing instead to fly off into the distance atop the winged horse. There, Zeus appears before Perseus and offers him godhood, but he refuses. In a heartwarming moment, Zeus then revives Io, reuniting her with Perseus while Pegasus soars triumphantly in the sky. Ready for more heart-pumping action? Leave us a comment, smash that like button, and hit subscribe to never miss another thrilling video from us.